welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Oh, okay, no problem. We have to wait for coffee before this starts. I'm keeping that in, by the way, because I'm always drinking coffee, and I think our listeners should know that when people are caffeinated. Welcome, everyone, to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. This is Jessica with Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast, and we are actually welcoming back an author who we had you on last year, I believe. Was it last year?
Yes, it was last year, probably around the same time or maybe a little later, I think.
Right. For all her little secrets, which was so good. And now we have Anywhere You Run. Welcome back, Wanda M. Morris. Tell us about Anywhere You Run.
Thank you so much. So yeah, this is my second book, and I had all the sophomore scaries about, will it be okay? Because it is a little different from my first book. Anywhere You Run is what I describe as a cat and mouse kind of thriller about two sisters who find themselves in different sorts of trouble, but trouble nonetheless. And they both take off running to different parts of the country. One sister heads up north, one sister winds up in a small town in rural Georgia. And as they are trying to start new lives for themselves, what they don't realize is that there is a man with very dark secrets of his own who is hot on their trail with a really unique motive for finding the women.
So there is actually, one thing I really was really interesting. So this is historical fiction. So all her little secrets, and not to give too much away, these books kind of touch, right?
Yeah, there's a bit of an Easter egg in there. Yeah,
they touch. That's all I'm going to say. But
you don't have to read one before the other or anything. They're both standalones.
Yes, absolutely. And to be honest with you, it's more of just like a bonus in this one. I've read all her little secrets, but you really should. We'll get back to that. So this book here, Anywhere You Run, so it's historical fiction, but it opens with a reference to some murders that actually did happen. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, and then we can kind of get into Violet, aka Vera, and Marigold, and just who they are.
Yeah. So the book opens up with the brutal murder of three civil rights activists, Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner. Three young men who had come into Mississippi as part of the Freedom Riders Project to help Black Mississippians get the right to vote in 1964. And they were murdered in Neshoba County, Mississippi. And I like to tell people the reason why I started the book with such a dramatically horrifying opening is because 1964 Mississippi was a very different place. It was treacherous, and it was entrenched in segregation. And so I wanted the reader to become immediately immersed in the time period because it kind of sets the stage for what happens throughout the course of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it really does. And it informs just the world that these sisters are living in. Not that things are just like honky-dory as soon as they leave. I know there's talk about things being better up north, and then the question is, are they really better, or are they better in some ways, but the more things change, the more they stay the same? And then there's pretty much what they're going through. So they had a sister, Rose, I believe, who is no longer with them, and you don't find out why until later, but their names are Rose, Violet, and Marigold, and they were like they were considered their parents' bouquet, which I thought was very sweet, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. And it was also too a nod to the fact that their parents lived with such horror and trauma around them, living in, the segregated Jim Crow South, that their mother thought she was bringing something beautiful in the world each time she gave birth to a child. And I think that that's really what a lot of Black people had to do then, is to find the beauty in the midst of all this very very much horror situation.
So one of them is raped by a white man who has been basically harassing her, and she's decided that's it. He's not going to do this to anyone else. She takes matters
Right.
into her own hands and she kills him.
Mhm.
And then she's basically like, oh no, I have to get out of here because I just, no matter what she did, like she could tell the police that he was harassing her. She could report the rape. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. She's a Black woman raped by a white man, and she doesn't get any. She doesn't get. I mean, there's
She
just
won't get justice. She
no
won't get
justice,
justice
no
in the jail
accountability,
cell.
no
Yeah, in the
justice.
jail cell. Yeah.
So she decides she's going to make sure this does not happen to anybody else, and she decides she's going to make her own justice. And then the other sister is an activist, and she becomes involved with a man who she's working with, and he gets her pregnant, and she puts him on such a pedestal. This man is, he's so smart, and he's, so righteous, and he is just sleeping with her and has no interest in helping out or being involved in this baby's life. So the two of them, that's it, and that's where stories diverge.
Right.
So when you were writing Violet slash Vera and Marigold, were they, how did you sort of differentiate the two voices? Because they had very distinct voices. Their journeys did have similarities and differences. Well, I know some people, I know some authors, like they'll use like a playlist when they're writing one character and another. How did you get into their voices?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that was one of the challenges of this book. The book is told in several different points of view. And I really did want to make sure that the two sisters in particular had very distinct voices. And the way I did that was in how I kind of created their worlds around them, if you will. So, Marigold, she used certain terminology, and, trigger warning, there are some racial epithets in the book. But Marigold, because, she aspired to be a lawyer, and she was working with the Mississippi Summer Project, which was a civil rights initiative, she was yearning to be more than what Mississippi offered her. And so I tried to make sure that the language that she used and the way she spoke hinted to that. And with Violet's voice, Violet was one of these people, she was just, kind of feisty, and I live for the moment, and I'm going to do what pleases me. And so I tried to create a dialogue around her that, was kind of fast moving and fast thinking, and not really, searching for a higher place, but just kind of like, I'm living in the moment. And then one of the other things I tried to do was to make sure that the characters that interacted with them, they fed off of that. And so they interacted with these two sisters in a certain way that you could kind of hear their voices were different.
How much research did you have to do into both the Mississippi and the Mississippi Summer Project, and also just, the different places that they ended up, in order to really give this rich, authentic scope of what they were going to go through as two young Black women in these predicaments, and also being pursued by somebody with his own agenda.
So for that, I have to first and foremost give a huge shout out and thanks to the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American History and Culture here in Atlanta, Georgia. They are part of the Fulton County Library System. And once I had decided on the topic I was going to write about, I walked into the library the first day and I told the librarian, here is the type of book I'm writing. And, I need to know whatever it is I need to know about this time period. And, he looked at me and he's like, I got you. And, he kind of immediately went about gathering up all these books and papers and giving me access to all these documents that gave me the ability to research very, very in depth into not only, the Mississippi Summer Project, but also the murders of Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner. In addition to all of that, I read a ton of old magazines like Life and Ebony and Jet and all sorts of magazines from that time period, because I not only wanted to know the historical aspects of the story, I also wanted I wanted to have the ear of how people talk and what they were talking about during that time period. What was the music like? What was the fashion like? And so I did all of that, and it wound up, I hope, coming into the book in different sorts of ways: the way people talk, what they wore, the dances that they did. There's references in the book to that. And so I tried to make sure that the reader was immediately immersed in what it was like in 1964, whether you were in Mississippi or you were in Ohio, which was one of the places that one of the sisters ran off to.
You did a really good job. It was so funny. I was waiting for you. I was like, is she going to say immersed? Is she going to say immersed? Because it really is an immersive experience reading the book. So you nailed it. I was also going to ask you a little bit about the audiobook version there. So it's the dual narrators, correct?
Yeah.
Did you have any say in who did the narration?
Yeah, you know what? My publisher has been very, very good about that with both books. They kind of come up with a list of potential narrators, and then they send me samples of all of them and say, hey, give a listen to all of these and tell us which ones you like, which sounds like the voices that were kind of in your head as you were writing the book. And so I always give a shout out to William Morrow for giving me some say-so in that. Yeah, the narrators are just wonderful, wonderful. Yeah.
How do you build suspense? Do you have certain points that you're like, okay, I want to, like, do you write in sequence, or do you have like a timeline as to when you want certain things to happen?
Mm-hmm. So I am a plotter, or I do outline my books. Now, when I say outline, it's not an in-depth outline, but I do know where kind of the big scenes of the book are. So it's funny because when I am writing a book, I don't hear voices in my head necessarily. What I hear is like dialogue between the characters. And so they're not talking to me. I really kind of hear them talking to each other. And so I try and capture that all down. In order to build the suspense, I try to place my characters in very difficult positions and then try and figure out how they're going to navigate their way out of it. And I think when you do that with the characters, it naturally builds suspense and tension. You know, if you throw a character down into a dark basement and lock the door, and they're just there and it's just dark, but then they start to hear noises and footsteps coming toward them, and now they have to figure out how to get out. I think that kind of naturally, you know, that's a simplistic example, but I think that's how I try and build tension, by putting them into difficult situations and having them navigate their way out.
I get anxiety just thinking about that. Are you ever like, oh my, what did I do? Like, why? Why did I make this so difficult for her?
Yes. In a word, yes. I have written some scenes and gone, how in the world are you going to get out of this? Like, what are you going to do? There are a couple scenes in Anywhere You Run that when I was writing them, I was like, what do I do now? Like, how will she get out of this? But then that's kind of the joy of writing too, is to see where the story goes, because when I'm writing it for the first time, I kind of don't know where it's going either.
Actually with that, because I'm thinking about like all the scenes that could be, those could have been, do you ever decide, like, are you ever like, oh my gosh, I need to walk this back, this is just not going to work, nobody could get out of this? Or do you just challenge yourself to push forward like your characters might?
No, I don't think I've ever taken a scene and scrapped it because it was too much anxiety. I think the more the better. What I have had to do is figure out, how does she get out of it, and how do I continue to keep the reader along with me? Because here's the thing about tension. It is like a rubber band, and so you want to pull the tension as tight as you can, and then kind of let it snap. But if you pull it too much, then the rubber band breaks, right? And it's the same with a reader. If you're just pulling it along too much, readers are kind of like, that's enough, that I'm good. I can't read 15 pages of that nonstop. And so it's just a matter of just pulling it taut enough that the reader hangs in there with you, and doesn't give up on the book.
So before we go, I want to ask you, is there an adaptation of All Her Little Secrets happening? I heard a rumor, and man, is it a rumor? But
You're
probably
so
not.
funny.
From the look on your face, it is absolutely true. Are you allowed to talk about it?
Yes, absolutely. So, gosh, you know what? I get chills every time I talk about it. Yeah, All Her Little Secrets, which was my first book, is going to be adapted into a 1-hour limited series television show, executive produced and starring Uzo Aduba.
Yay!
Who starred in Orange is the New Black and In Treatment. She's won 3 Emmys.
She's so good.
She is just phenomenal. I tell you, the whole team is phenomenal, because the other executive producer is a woman by the name of Denise Davis. And if you're not familiar with her, she produced Insecure, starring Issa Rae. And the screenwriter is Orrin Squire, who has written on shows like This Is Us and Evil and The Good Fight. So, I mean, it's just like a,
oh my God, that's a really interesting combination of things, though, because like This Is Us is like, to me, like that's like, like a tissue fest, like your cry fest, and like feel all the feelings. And Evil, I mean, is scary.
Right?
Oh my God, so scary. Yeah, but like good, because I continue to watch it, but also it's scary.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? I think there are aspects of All Her Little Secrets that are really, really scary. They're rooted in realism, but certain parts of that book are really frightening to think about. And so I just think it's a stellar combination of a team. Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Well, I'm excited too. Do we know where it's going to run? Do we know where it's going to be available, or not just yet?
It's going to be on Showtime. We don't have a date as of yet of when it's going to. They haven't started filming yet. They are still, writing the screenplays, but yeah, it'll be on Showtime Network.
This has been a pleasure. Are you going to is there book 3 coming out?
I am working on my 3rd book as we speak. That's why I'm kind of in sweats. Today is a writing day.
Oh, come on.
And so, yeah, I'm working on...
If I could be in sweats every day, I totally would. That is why, like, when I come to work, I make a big effort, because if I'm even remotely in sweats, I wouldn't get anything done.
You're so funny. You're so funny. But yeah, it's another book, takes place in Georgia, but this time it takes place in coastal Georgia, down near Savannah area. And it is present day set. So this one is an historical, about a young woman who is dealing with grief and loss, and she has to overcome all that to help Black landowners when she uncovers a scheme that threatens to take away their land. Yeah.
So I want to thank you very, very much. Check out Anywhere You Run and All Her Little Secrets. You could read them both individually, standalone of themselves, but they do fit together sort of like it's like a nice dovetail effect.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to see what the limited TV series is going to be like. And I can't wait to talk to you again. You're super fun to talk to.
Yes, please have me back. It's been so much fun. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. That is absolutely. I am going to be reaching out as soon as anything is available. Wanda M. Morris, thank you so much for coming caffeinated to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast.
Thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone.
We are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.